Well, thanks for coming. Um, we're going to get started. I think there might be some more people joining us, and we have people joining us virtually. So we welcome those who are joining us virtually as well. A couple things for those of you that are joining us virtually. I'm hoping that you can see the screen. Uh, you are muted. So any questions that you have, please put them in the chat, and we will make sure that those get answered. We'll also share those questions with the people in the audience. People in the audience, feel free to raise your hands. We'll answer any questions and share those with those folks that are virtual. This is being recorded, so just for your information. And this is our first time doing both in person and virtual, so sort of bear with us. We try to make sure we've got the kinks worked out, but there's a reason we don't work in the technology department. So bear with us. So this is really an opportunity for us to get together to talk with junior parents about the post-secondary planning process. It is January of junior year. Half of the junior year is done, and a lot of questions are starting to come up, I'm sure, for you as to what happens a year and a half from now when your child walks across the stage, takes that diploma, and begins the next phase of their education and their life. And our goal in our department is really to help you work through that process. So I wanted to first of all start by introducing our department, and then we're going to go through, just talk about the process, give you some important information, and answer any questions that you might have. First of all, I'm Suzanne Crossman. I am the Director of Guidance and Transition Office. I've been at Landmark for many years. We won't say how many, but let's say it's over 40. So I've been at guidance office for over 10 years. I used to be at the prep program. I was an academic advisor, study skills department head. I've worn a lot of hats over the years. I also have two children that have been through this process. One who is now just turned 26 yesterday. He's a paramedic in North Carolina, but I helped him and walked with him from the parent side as he looked at colleges, and a daughter who is finishing her last semester in graduate school. So I know a little bit about it, what it's like from your chair as well, and a little bit of an interesting process. A son who wouldn't tell me hardly anything, and a daughter who told me way too much. So I've sort of been there from that perspective. Josh, wanted you to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Who's next? Whose picture is next?
Yeah, those for those in front of me and those online. Yeah. Josh Melanson. This is my 6th year, part-time guidance counselor, full-time teacher. Right now at this moment, I'm teaching tutorials. I used to be in the study skills department, teaching the senior internship class. So I've kind of been all over the place, but I'm excited I landed here and excited to be working with this crew. Mr. Roberts is next.
I'm Kevin Roberts. I've been here also a little bit of while. I think it's my 19th year. I was a house parent for many years. I teach in the language arts department. I've been in this department for 4 years, 4th year. And I'm also a parent of a junior. So I'm going through this process for the first time myself. My son is a junior at Beverly High School. And so we're in it together, I'll say.
Doing the whole post-secondary advising about or about I am super happy to get that advice that post-secondary. So to do Josh, next slide. So I wanted to start today, and I'm trying to, for those online, I just want to make sure that you can hear. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit more loudly. I want to start today talking a little bit about our philosophy of this approach. And not unlike all other areas of Landmark, we're a very student-centered, individualized approach to the post-secondary planning process. So recognizing, one, that there is not one size fits all, that we want to look at students individually and figure out what makes sense for them based on their interests, based on their academic needs, based on their career goals, based on their personality, and really what's the best plan for them. But in addition to finding a plan, our process is about a lot more than just what are you going to do when you graduate. It's going through that process and using that process to learn about yourself. We want them to learn more about themselves, to take ownership for their education, to empower them, to allow them to develop some good self-advocacy skills that are going to be essential for their post-secondary success. So this can look like a couple different ways as we go through the process. One example we can use right now is that, students, some of our seniors are coming in and they need to call a school. I need to set up an interview. Or they've called me, they say they're missing a letter, but I know we sent it. So they need to call the school. It's easy for us to call the school and straighten that out. But more importantly, we'll sit with the students. Who are you going to call? How are you going to approach this? What are you going to say? And then have them make that call themselves. And that's an important part of the process. It can take a little bit more time than just making the call ourselves, but we don't need to, that's not a skill that we need to learn. It's a skill that they need to learn. So as we go through this process, part of it is teaching them how to manage the process. It's also a time management skill. This is a huge project, and it's managing the paperwork and keeping track of due dates. So we're teaching them those skills as well as getting through the process. We want to be supportive. We want to be student focused. So it's not our goals for them. It's what their goals are for themselves. And I think one of the things that's important as we go through this process is that their learning disability is part of the factors that we need to look at as we make the plan, but it's not the entire piece of the puzzle, and it's helping us maintain that balance. So who they are as a person, what kinds of school they want to be in, what kind of program they want to be in, what are their career goals, those are all important things to consider in addition to their learning disability. And I think it's one of our struggles is continuing to work to maintain that balance and not let one or the other take over as we work through the process with students. Now, how do we do that? We do a lot of different things with students that we're starting right now. One, with juniors, we're going to be working with them and meeting with them about every 2 to 3 weeks. In junior year, in senior year, it becomes even more aggressive, particularly from the time we return to school until around Thanksgiving. And we're meeting with them pretty much every week. In addition to our individual meetings, we're going to be holding one required workshops. The first one starts in February, and students will be attending those during their tutorial periods. And the first one will be a look at what are my options and looking at a post-secondary options and exposing students to a variety of different options. The second one, there'll be another one on understanding support in the post-secondary level and what's the law and how does it change and what is your responsibility. So there will be throughout the spring some required workshops that students will attend that will be built into their schedule. They'll go during their tutorial period. And then there's Saturday school workshops that students will be involved in. So workshops, some mandatory, some recommended, their individual work with us. Another thing that we do, particularly in the fall, is we welcome onto the campus about 50 to 60 this fall. College reps will come onto campus and present to students, and it's an opportunity for students to learn about particular colleges and other programs as well. We've had, technical schools come on, gap years, and those happen through September, October, and maybe a little bit into November. So those are all things that we build into the structure to help move students through this process. Kevin's going to talk a little bit about the options.
I'm still letting people in the waiting room.
The people at home are having a really hard time hearing, so I'm trying to navigate them.
Okay.
Restless.
I will try to, should I yell into this? Should I get, this is good? Okay. All right. All right. The first workshop we're going to have with juniors is on February 1st. We'll probably, a lot of juniors will have meetings with us before then, but we'll take a look at these options. We really validate all different options. Landmark is individualized. So we look at what is right or what could be a potential path or paths for students in looking at all of these. These are numbers. These were updated from this past year. They've been fairly consistent in this range for a long time. We just like to show there's more than that 4-year college option. There is some overlap in some of these numbers as well. We look at 4-year colleges that might have a trade focus at them. There might be, gap year programs that give you college credit. So these numbers are not distinct in and of themselves. We have to tag them differently in the numbers here, but they don't sit alone. We try to present, like early on, we try to present all the options to the students so that they can see, all right, it's not just, really overwhelmingly society says, go to a 4-year school and that's the path. We want to show them that there are other paths and look at what is the right path for them. Okay. All of these programs, we'll make plugs along the way, but all of these programs will be represented at our post-secondary fair that's coming up in March. We'll give details on that, but that's kind of in that spirit, is that we look at all of those as well. Okay.
Hi, folks at home. Just apologies. We're trying to coordinate doing this in person for patient people and trying to make sure you can hear us at home. So we apologize for the technical difficulties. Thanks for being patient. I'm Kelly Simone. The people here already heard that, but at home you did not. So just wanted to say again, super happy to be at Landmark. This is my 4th year. I've been in education since 2003 and school counseling for too many years that I can't do the math at this point. I started in 2009. So my piece right now is going to be talking about the entire sort of spectrum when you look at what we consider colleges. So we're not going to be talking about all the programs that Kevin just mentioned, but we're going to be looking at how academic support is available for students when they're at the college setting. And I like to move around, so this is painful. So first of all, the first bullet we have there is accommodations. So the schools are legally obligated to provide accommodations if the student discloses and provides appropriate documentation. Suzanne's going to talk about the documentation in a few minutes, so I'm not going to go into those details, But it is something that we'll be nagging you about for the next year, basically, because in order to get those accommodations that you're entitled to get, you need to have the right paperwork submitted. So that's something we'll definitely be talking about probably ad nauseum as we go along. So in terms of the accommodations, like I said, all colleges are going to start with that baseline support. And there are around 5 things that we see kids typically are getting granted for accommodations. Those would be things like a copy of notes, extended time on tests, a reduced course load as a possibility. I do have these written down, but I should have them memorized too. Priority registration, so that's the ability to sign up for classes before the bulk of students sign up, and also getting a foreign language waiver. So those are just a sample of some things that you might get as accommodations. We kind of look at the level of support that's offered. Some people talk about it as tiers, but for us, we kind of see it as more of a continuum. So you're going to start with some colleges that just offer these accommodations. And you may or may not have an incredibly supportive faculty that goes with it. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of colleges are adding support services that didn't have them before. So if I throw out a name today, by the time we start researching with your student for next year, they may have a support program in place. But for example, a school that does not have, I would say, anything beyond accommodations would be Holy Cross, just to throw out an example. Boston University as well, I believe, does not have a support program. So those are 2 examples of schools that just offer accommodations. As far as going beyond that level, there are a whole host of schools that have programs. So they're going to be giving your student more services, which might include things like meeting one-on-one with an academic advisor or academic coach. You may have things like, that's okay. Extra access to tutoring or the writing center. So they're just going to give you more support. So it's an overall more supportive campus, and those things aren't necessarily going to be available for an extra charge. Okay, those are things that they may include just with the tuition. Then there are also schools that are going to be providing services for a fee, and that can be even more intensive. So say you go from meeting with an academic advisor once a week to maybe 2 or 3 times a week. There are also support programs that are designed just for the freshman year. And then students wean off them once they have a good sense of how college works, because obviously it's a huge transition. Some of the schools that we've worked with that have services, but not necessarily for LD students, just academic support in general, would be like High Point, Bryant, UConn. Mr. Roberts just went to UConn, so we know that that is actually a lot more supportive than we thought it was. So we're kind of excited to be able to talk about that option for our students. We've also found locally Merrimack has really doubled down and is giving our students a wonderfully supportive experience through a program that is not for specifically for LD students, but students who want to have an additional layer of academic support. And then finally, there are those schools that have support programs, usually for a fee, I would say entirely for a fee. And these are designed specifically for students with LD. So that would be like Dean, American, Marist, Denver, Lynn, University of Arizona. So there's a whole wide spectrum. Now, I bet in the chat, I'm not monitoring it right now because Mr. Roberts is, but the question we get, the number one question whenever we talk to parents, is there a list? Everyone wants to have the list of the schools that are recommended for landmark students. And like everything here, it's highly individualized. So we can't give you a list. But we do have really small caseloads. So we spend an awful lot of time meeting with your students, trying to get to know them and get to know their needs. We talk to their academic advisors, their teachers. We read their testing. So we help them figure out what would be a good fit for them. But we can't possibly give you a list without getting to know your student. We do have on our website, I don't know if it's gone in the chat yet for the folks at home, but we do have a list of colleges that students have been accepted to or have chosen to attend. I think there are 2 different versions still out on the website. Let's see. I think I covered everything for now. Like I said, we're probably gonna have a question about the list. Are there any questions from anybody here in our studio audience? Nothing yet, huh? Okay, great.
I just want to add a couple of things before we go on. One of the things we were talking about this recently in the office, one of the things that we are seeing more of, in addition to those 3 levels of support, is, and I think this has happened more in the last few years as people have become more used to interacting virtually, is that some families and some students, if a student is looking at a school or a program, but they don't have the support, they're working with individuals or various organizations that sort of take that support outside and bring it to the student. So that is a sort of another trend that we're seeing, to add support. So that sort of doesn't fit into what the schools provide, but it's just to be aware of as you're looking at schools, and it maybe opens up some doors if you have a school or a program that your son or daughter is looking at, but the support isn't there. Meeting with people virtually has become an interesting new trend that's really just developing post-COVID. The other thing I wanted to mention is foreign language, because it gets a little confusing, and I want to be clear on the foreign language waiver. I was going to ask if there's any questions in the chat that everyone would be interested in, and this is certainly one. One is the foreign language requirement that's part of the admission to the school. When students apply to schools, we will submit with their transcript a waiver that says they have a learning disability. We don't require them to take a foreign language. We don't offer a foreign language. And 99% of schools accept that. If you're looking at the University of California system, which very few of our students do, they push back on that a little bit, but they're even not doing that as much anymore. But that is for the admission to the school. That does not mean that they automatically are waived for foreign language for the college requirements, the college academic requirements. So that can be a couple of things. One, some schools have told us we will waive it for admission to our school, but we're a liberal arts school that requires it, so the students have to take it, and they won't waive it. So that could, St. A's is an example of a school that's been very clear that they won't waive it. Some schools will grant a course substitution. Some schools will easily waive it. Some schools don't require it. Sometimes it depends on the major. An example I often give is my son was a paramedicine major. He had to take Spanish because he was preparing to work on an ambulance, and it's a good idea to know foreign language, Spanish specifically. So if he had asked, he would have been told, no, not for this major, but for different majors, they would have waived it. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. If a school doesn't waive it, or if a student has to take the foreign language, it doesn't mean that that school is should automatically be eliminated. Some students have taken American Sign Language at school, so that's one thing to look at. Do they offer sign language? Some of our students have done very well with that. Some students have taken the foreign language over the summer, like at a community college, one class over the summer, and transfer it in. So even if you can't get it waived, there are ways to deal with that, but it's just important to know before you make that final decision where you stand with the foreign language. At this point, I just want to be clear that just because the student is accepted with our waiver for high school requirements doesn't mean that you don't have to go through another process with the college requirements. And sometimes that can be a little confusing. Yes. That is correct. But a lot of our students have taken that in college, and and done well with that. Yes. Right, if a college requires it, most schools in their admissions requirement to be admitted in the college will say you need 2 years of a foreign language. Most schools will waive that for our students, but some schools will require it, and then you have to go through a process to see if they will waive it or not, or if they'll grant you a course substitution. And it's really school by school. Some schools waive it, no problem. Bryant? Study abroad or um, literature from Italy. I don't know. Yes. Yes. Yes, they'll accept you knowing that you haven't had a foreign language. The example I gave you earlier of St. Anselm's. St. Anselm's will take our students. They just have been very clear, like that our students will have to take a foreign language when there, but they'll accept them. They won't hold that against them in the admissions process. But just because they accept you doesn't mean that that part is behind you. So that's now the question. The next piece of that puzzle is, so I want to get these accommodations. I want to ask about a foreign language waiver. I want a note taker in class. How do I go about doing that? The important thing that we're going to go over with the students is when students arrive at a college campus, or even a technical school, any kind of program where they're going to need accommodations. One is the student's responsibility, and only the student's responsibility, to disclose their learning disability and to submit documentation. We will drill this into students. This is a subject of one of our upcoming workshops. So a student, a college may know this student's coming from Landmark, they have a learning disability. They are by law not allowed to give them accommodations until the student asks. It's the student's right to disclose or not disclose. If a student does not disclose, they don't get the accommodations, but it's their right and their responsibility. When they disclose, they're going to need documentation. And that's what we want to talk about in terms of the need to get updated documentation before students enter college. By updated documentation, they need an updated psychoeducation evaluation within 3 years. And it needs to be the cognitive test and the achievement test. And the cognitive test needs to be an adult version. So if you want to look at your students' testing, and we're happy to look at it for you as well, and see, one, is it within 3 years by the time they start college? And is it the adult version? So the vast majority of students will need updated testing before they start school, because most of them will have had it when they started Landmark and haven't had it updated. So cognitive and achievement, it's important that it's the adult intelligence scale, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. Those are the important things. Now, the next question is, when do we need this done? And it's not a simple answer. If your student will be looking at schools with comprehensive programs, in most cases, those programs are going to want the test when you apply to the school. So, for example, American University and Marist University have comprehensive programs. When students submit their application, they also have to submit an application for the comprehensive LD support program with their testing. Generally, we're doing that November 1st if we want to do early action. So if your student has at least one school with a comprehensive program on their list, they should have that testing done by November 1st, report in hand. If not, it just delays them to process the application and making a decision. There may be many schools that you don't send the testing until you decide to enroll. So if you go to Bryant, Roger Williams, Endicott, you're not going to need the testing until you decide to enroll. But if on that list you have Endicott, Bryant, Roger Williams, and Marist, you're going to need it for Marist. So my recommendation is going to be best practice is have that report in hand by November 1st so that you don't delay the process. Now, some of you, your students are funded and your student is up for a 3-year reeval. That report may be sufficient. Now, the schools are writing that report not for the purpose of the college documentation. They're writing that report to determine eligibility. So they don't necessarily have to include post-secondary recommendations, but a lot of times they will. So that can be sufficient. You can also use, we have someone who comes here and tests students, Dr. Bell. We can give you her contact information, and it's on the website in the guidance and transition page. She will coordinate with us, and she writes very good reports. I'm not trying to give her business, but I will say she writes really good reports. She writes really good recommendations for accommodations. She sometimes can break up the testing over 2 days if the student's getting tired, because we give her an office across the street, and so students don't have to be missing lots of classes. Sometimes she'll work with us to say what part of the day, or we'll say, not today, can do it tomorrow. Or I have called her and said, Joe Schmo just added Marist to the list. Can you get the testing for me, in 2 weeks? And she will fit it in. So she is there. But a lot of families will also use whoever's tested your student over the years, and they follow them and they know them, and you have a good relationship with them. So you don't have to use Ann, but she is here if you would like to. Your district might be testing. If your child is up for a 3-year reeval, I just talked with another junior parent. They're going to get tested. They are like 8 days shy of 16 and a half on the adult version. Like, make sure they get the adult version, not the child's version, because you don't want to have, test a student now and then have it not be good in November. Yes. Yep.
The question was, how much of our assessment or suggestions for schools is impacted by testing results versus their actual achievements?
So it's how much of our recommendations is impacted by testing results versus achievement. I would say, I'd say what I focus most on what I see day-to-day functioning and how a student is working in this environment, and looking at what support a student needs to be successful here. So it's hearing from the teachers, hearing from the academic advisors, and then looking at what that testing shows. I think it's a balance of everything. But if I had to prioritize one over the other, the testing is reflective of how a student does in a very specific testing situation. I would prioritize how they do day in and day out over the course of time here. And looking at, what kinds of support, what kinds of accommodations, what kind of environment, class size, support of teachers. There's a lot of factors that go into, like, sort of the culture of the school. There are a lot of factors that go into that. That's probably not a concrete answer, but I don't think it's a process. Any other questions? Yes. Good question. Good question. So the first question is, when would you not disclose? My opinion is you should always disclose. My opinion is what I tell students is disclose, take everything you can get for accommodations, and then work your way back from there. Don't see how it's going to go and add them if you need them. Assume you need them and drop them if you don't need them, is my recommendation. Sometimes students, have been here for a while, they want to try it on their own. We don't recommend that. The other thing that tends to happen in terms of not disclosing is it's not that they don't disclose. What students will sometimes run into difficulty with is we'll meet with seniors this spring, submit their paperwork, fill in the intake form requesting disability. We'll help them disclose their disability, get all that paperwork sent off to the schools. When they land at the school in September or August, whenever school starts, in their college email will be we've got all your paperwork. The last thing you need to do is set up a meeting with us, come to our office. And they don't. So, and we try to drill that into them. Read your emails, follow up. What I was saying earlier about part of our work is helping them take responsibility and advocate for themselves. And that's part of our, part of our work is what's going to happen next year when they're in school is that email is not going to you. It's not going to us. Just to let you know, Johnny didn't come to this meeting. They'll say that email will sit there and nothing will happen until that student follows through. So we have had students who have called and said, I didn't get my accommodations. Let's look at your email. Oh, look, there's an email there. Did you follow up on that? No. So that's sometimes what happens is that follow through. The second question was, that depends on the school. Some schools, you're approved for your accommodations, and then the process is how do you access those accommodations that you're approved for? Sometimes they give you a letter every semester and you have to let your professors know. Some schools with a comprehensive program might do that for you. If you sign up for a comprehensive program, for some schools, like I think Hofstra, you're in for all 4 years. Other schools, you don't reapply, but you have to decide if you want to continue in that program. So we have some students who will be at, I'm thinking like Curry. I'm going to use the PAL program the first year. Second year, I'm just going to use some support services and accommodations, and I find I don't need it. So some students sort of wean away from that support. Those are fee-for-service programs too. So from a parent's point of view, there's some savings when they wean away from that. Some programs, for example, American University's program is just freshman year only. So their comprehensive part is just freshman year only. They still have support, but that comprehensive part goes away after the freshman year. So each of them is structured a little bit differently. So there isn't really one answer to that question. Any other questions in the chat? Yeah. So documentation, we will hound you about that. It is important. If you want to look, if you're not sure if your testing is sufficient, if you need updated testing, you can send the testing or have us look at it. We should have it here. We'll look at it and, give you our thoughts as well. So we're happy to, but it's one of those things that you just don't want it to last because sometimes those reports can take a while to get. So that's not for me for a little while. Josh, you're going to talk about applications.
I know, I'll get the fun part of talking about the application process. It's exciting stuff. So we are currently meeting with juniors right now, having our first meeting with juniors, and it's an exciting time to see them in the office. Embedded within that and webbed within that, it's something we're going to talk about, is this process and what that looks like. Primarily starting up in the fall. When we get back from the summer, we dive right in with our juniors in terms of our process here and what that looks like. And I'm just going to go from top to bottom on all of these different things you see on the slide today. So we primarily use Common App. Common App is the the sole application provider that we use online to streamline this process. There are still schools out there that don't necessarily have or that are on Common App. More are coming to Common App, which is great, but some are not. So we will work with your students, the students that we work with, to essentially help them apply to those schools if they have to go through the actual college themselves, their website. But most schools are off of Common App, which is great. And we find it pretty easy and, once again, streamlined and nice. And it's user friendly, which is also pretty good. So that's primarily, like I said, what we use, which is a nice tool to see. A full total disclaimer for parents that are here and online as well. Try to do your due diligence to hold back on creating the Common App for them. This is their process. This is important for them and for us to see and help them navigate that. So if I could say anything before I leave tonight, is just try to do your due diligence to make sure that you don't necessarily sign them up for Common App. Your student, your child should be, or children should be responsible for that. And it's just a good indicator for themselves to just, like, once again, this is an important decision to ultimately go to college. So as they should be a part of that process as well. So part of the admission plan option, the first one that you see up there is early decision. Not one that we necessarily recommend to a lot of students, but it's definitely an option for students. That primarily meaning behind that is that you would only primarily use that if you were maybe looking for an advantage to apply to a school. That might be your top-notch school, your number one, and you're really serious to put all your eggs in the basket for that specific school. So that early decision is binding. So if you did, let's say you apply to any school out there, early decision, you now have to withdraw all your applications because you got into that school. So it's something we tread lightly talking to students about, but it's very much a viable option for students to actually apply if you, once again, if you're really serious about that, as like a top one notch school that you really want to get into. And sometimes the admission department on the other side of things will look at that as like, wow, they're really serious about our program. Next, early action is primarily what our students use here, which is nice. Is it's non-binding, which is pretty good. So all your options are out there. All your cards are laid out on the table in terms of those different programs that students are applying to. The also nice thing with early action is when students apply, they're looking to hit the specific deadline of November 1st, sometimes December. But once again, we're behind the scenes working with your students, children, just more or less creating a plan to make sure that they hit those check marks as we navigate those, once again, November deadline or December deadlines. Also, it's nice to just get everything off your back and not have that angst and anxiety factor to it, right? So when you do apply early action, it's one less thing they have to worry about, making the turn from winter break, coming back in January, and it's just like everybody can take a sigh of relief and a breath. So majority of our students apply that way because, once again, it's just a nice little thing to just get out of the way. But there's enough time in between from now when we're working with them to when we hit the ground running in September to be eventually able to get them to their deadlines of, once again, November 1st or December if it needs to be. And then that next one that we can also have as an option is rolling or regular decision. Some students will apply that way if they need a little more time to, get their grades up, or they might have come from another program to Landmark and their GPA might not be where it needs to be. So we just need to wait a little extra time to put into it to apply maybe in January or February. Or you might be an art major and you're looking to finalize your portfolio. So that would be another option to look at in terms of just like getting everything done with that, getting everything looking savvy, and then eventually applying that way as well. Also webbed within this is the additional applications. Suzanne talked a little bit about the comprehensive programming. We will help students with that as well, is to help with, the forms, the documentation that goes along with it. Once again, it's sometimes it could be extensive, sometimes it could be laid back. Once again, we will help everybody with that if we cross that bridge when we get there. And lastly is, once again, the students primarily hit the ground running when they come back in the fall. We'll start talking to them about getting letters of recommendation. So it's an exciting time for them to ask teachers, peers, coaches for letters of rec. We'll even talk them through that process of like the conversation. If they're a little shy, they don't really know what to say, we'll help them with that, which is nice in terms of that language you can say. But most of them here have built that rapport with the people that they're going to ask, and they're able to just go in and be like, may I have that, please? And then we'll follow up with them in terms of, thanking them and walking them through that whole process in terms of, receiving the letters of rec, thanking them, and then telling them where they hopefully got into school. And then interviews are also a part of this. Some will interview, some will not interview, but that's okay. Also, we in the office are trying to outsource and get we're trying to get alumni to talk to our students here if they're looking at a specific program. So that's really exciting that we're doing behind the scenes. So if we can do that for all the students here, we will. And then some schools will have supplementary essays that we will help them with. On top of the college essay and the resume that we will help each student on our caseload develop and work on. That supplementary essay is just like that added extra bonus writing materials. Some are required, some are not. But I think I can speak for all of us here. We're pretty big believers on, if you have the option to do it, why not do it? It could set you apart from other candidates that are applying or applicants, right? And then there's the ACT and SAT. Some students will decide to send scores, some will not. And that's just a reminder out there, the parents online and here in person, that test optional is real, right? And that some applicants it seems like we're teetering more on the more side of students are going test optional, because schools, some are not looking for that, which is pretty exciting and pretty nice to know. Any questions online for that or in person? No. All right, off the hook. Yeah. Yes. So the question was, can more students apply? Can more students apply to one school early action? Yes, absolutely, they can apply. So our students do tend to go more towards that. The ideal list would be 2 reach schools, 2 target schools, and 2 safety schools, ultimately bringing the total to 6, right? But absolutely, 100%, yes. But only one early decision because it's binding. Yes. And there's signatures required. It's a pretty big deal. All right. So speaking about ACT and SAT, yes, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Kevin's going to come back.
Yeah. So on the topic of SATs, ACTs, we are giving the ACTs coming up in February. If you're taking those, you've already registered for them. And if you haven't, then you didn't register, then you're not taking those at this time. That is closed. We're going to give the SATs in April. You want those dates? I don't know them off the top of my head, but I'm sure we do. I think it's April 20 something. Okay. Not 20 something. All right. So we try to line them up with the Saturday schools. So Saturday would be that first day of testing, and then also testing on Sunday morning as well, because our students will get at least time and a half. Most of them get double time or more. So we apply for those accommodations. We do that on behalf of students. With the SAT and the College Board, we have already applied for accommodations for your student, whether or not they're choosing to take them or not, whether we've had that conversation. It's just easier in our process to go ahead and apply for those. And so it's possible that you may have seen some emails back saying these accommodations have come in. That's what we do. And really, and that's based on your neuropsych testing that comes off of those. We submit that documentation, and that's how we validate those accommodations. Many schools are test optional. Okay, Josh said this already, and really, I've already said that really the process is very individualized. So I'm going to speak in generalizations, but really, we all want to have the individual conversation with you about your student, if that's applicable. If you want to have that conversation, I will say frankly that my son, I don't believe he's going to take any of them. Okay. I fully plan on leaving this decision up to him. I don't think it's worth it. If he sees it as as the traditional rite of passage thing to do, this is what kids do in high school, I will totally validate him, pay the fee, say, yes, go take it. But if he says, no, I'd rather go to work at Jersey Mike's that day instead of do that, and I'm like, yes, go do that. That's great. So really, that's really where I firmly believe, and I'll say very transparently, there are so many schools that are test optional. This is by and large the trend right now. It was coming before COVID. COVID gave it a nice little nudge, just to validate that students are the product of their 4-year high school experience and not a 4-hour, 6-hour standardized test. And I know I've got a lot of, supporters in our community. But really this is happening. And that many schools are really not even looking at them. I think from our current senior class, I think there was 2, maybe 3 that end up sending their scores out of the class of 70. So really this is happening at Landmark, outside of Landmark. There's lots of, I will validate lots of reasons. As I said, like, the student wants to take it, by all means, take it. If they need that piece. It is a good, there's so many professions, as in teaching, where you have to sit for a standardized test later on for some license. It is a good process to go through. It's a good practice to have, so for that reason, there's a good reason to take the test, and to have that practice. We give it, we often give it right in this room, or in the classrooms upstairs. So it is it's with us as facilitators. So students will know us, they'll feel comfortable here. To have that initial process as part of the testing, that's a nice way to do it. And what more to say? Questions? Okay. Yep.
Could you just explain to them how you publicize the dates, how the process of registration works?
Yes. Question was, how do we publicize the dates and of registering, and how do we go through that process? We publish that in the student announcements. We publish that in the weekly updates to the parents of when those registration dates need to be. We try to do that well in advance to give us a cushion. With the ACT in particular, we have to register them first and then apply for the accommodations. So we need to front load that. So that process did happen throughout, I want to say, even going back before Thanksgiving break, we talked about, and then gave us the buffer between Thanksgiving and Christmas to register for the ACTs. The student would then come to our office to sit down with us. And usually it's we're sitting down, registering as the student, saying, "Hey, is this right? Is this what we're doing? I'm walking you through this." And then there's oftentimes, if you've gone through the process with us, we'll get you on the phone to say, "Hey, what's the credit card number?" We need to punch that in, because you're always helpful for that, your parents, nothing else. And that's that process. You'll get a confirmation about that. And then leading up to the testing, we will give email reminders to the students that are registered saying, these are the items that you need to bring. Make sure you come to the library. We're going to start testing by 8:00, and all of those reminders and details on that. Any other questions related to that? Good? Debbie? That's a great question. What's the difference between ACTs and SATs? All schools will look at both. Will accept both those numbers. The ACT has a science section that the SAT does not. That's the major piece to it.
This year it'll be something else.
This year, the SAT is moving to a digital format. So that is going to be new for everybody, including ourselves as proctors. So it is going to be completely on the computer. Many of our students will get I wavered between many and most, but most really will get the accommodation to have that text read as a screen reader. And we'll see if students, I'm fascinated to see if students like it better as a digital format or not. We can request a paper option on both, right? Right. So with that, so with the SAT, yes, is going to be one day because it is, as Kelly said, dynamic, that it is going to adjust to the responses that you give. So it is going to be, I don't even know how to AI generated and AI determined of like choose your own adventure books, right? In the digital age. That's all I could say. Is that follow-up questions to that? I didn't explain that very well. Right. Great. Right. Great. Do we provide training? And how do we prepare them for that? So with their registration, they have access to training materials on their websites, whether the ACT or SAT, College Board. And there are practice exams on there that they can use. We pass those along to their tutors, and if that's applicable, their tutors can do some of that work with them in tutorial. Another nice training platform is Khan Academy. Khan Academies is for the SATs. They don't have one for ACTs. But that is, Khan Academy is that same, I'm going to use the word dynamic again because it's not the right thing, but I don't know. It is still going to adapt based on their questions to give them harder questions or easier questions throughout. That's the way Khan Academy is set up. So that's a great tool and resource for you.
Faculty to
Yes.
share.
Yes, we're going to train. So we're going to train the tutorial teachers on how to do that and how to access those materials tomorrow as well.
Answer for all students in the library or small rooms, and then there's another question: if a child does not submit test scores, do they need to build up their extra clubs?
Okay. All right, one at a time. Are all students either in the library or small classrooms? Yes, unless there's some other reason not to. But yeah, no, this is very spaced out. Some kids are in the tutorial center. And if you know the tutorial center, it has individual cubbies and space for them. We've, I don't know if does the College Board care if I admit this, but we've had students like on the floor taking the test and we don't care. Like, no, they're not supposed to know. They don't get the copy of this recording. Right.
If the space isn't working out for students,
We will adapt. Yes. Yes.
we have
All in the spirit of they need to advocate, right? It's good. So they do they need to do any special efforts to build up their resume if they're not submitting scores is the question. Colleges are looking for really validating how the student spends their time. So that's what we want to really showcase in the application process. Who is the student? How do they think? How are they spending their time? I to build up the resume to balance the test score. That doesn't. No, don't do that. We just want to showcase what they're doing, how they're doing it, really their academic efforts will be reflected in their GPA, in their recommendations from their teachers, and really showcased in their writing, describing who they are. So if they're, I don't know. I think that answers that. Okay.
Kevin was saying that so few of our seniors submitted test scores. If you're concerned about should my child submit test scores or not, or will they get into the schools that they have their heart set on, I would encourage you to look at the last few weeks of homeroom announcements where we've published sort of the schools that seniors have gotten into. Almost all of those, I think with maybe one exception that I can think of off the top of my head, have applied test optional. So just to give you a sense of the sort of the climate and sort of where students are getting in applying test optional, just take a look at the homeroom announcements. I think it was last week's, right after Christmas was last week's, was sort of a whole bunch of them, just to give you a sense. And I think they were almost all were test optional. Kelly's going to talk about another fun topic from test to money.
Financial aid. I also wanted to mention I was on a call today with Syracuse just to go back to the question about whether a student should try to build up their extracurriculars if they're not submitting test scores. And they basically said they're looking for students who've gone the extra mile, sort of like, you don't have to start your own nonprofit, but you did a little something extra. You didn't just kind of float along and do the minimum. And I think that looks different for every student. I had a student who added a school today. We needed to do a rec letter that we didn't have to before. And he had just such a cool, unique profile because he has an out of school hobby, a part-time job. He did one club here and did well in school. So, that's perfect. That's a very well-rounded student. And it's also being true to himself. He didn't just join a bunch of clubs just to pad his resume. So I think that's super important, just for them to be themselves. All right, so back to financial aid. I could fill an hour or more talking about financial aid, and there are some great webinars out there. So we will be making those things available to you so you can start getting primed. You may have seen in the news, if you've started reading about this college stuff at all, that they just redid the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, which is the document, I guess you could call it that, even though now it's all online, that all colleges require if you're applying for financial aid. So their launch was kind of a fiasco. If you're hearing bad press, it's just that they did this major change. They're still working out the bugs. Things are going to be fine. And by the time this class applies, it's just going to be smooth sailing, I hope. So I guess the basics of financial aid, I would say, is there are two different things you can see on the slide behind me. There's need-based aid and there's merit money. So merit money is the scholarship that a college would award your student based on their grades, maybe their activities, just kind of how strong an applicant they are. And that's money, again, you don't have to pay that back. It's usually awarded at the time of admission. So you'll get a nice letter. Congratulations, we've accepted you and you've won the, $7,000 a year presidential scholarship. This is very common. We have seen a lot of great financial aid coming in the form of merit money. I would say unprecedented in the time I've been doing this. So colleges really are trying to get people attracted to their schools. The financial aid offices are not able to do a complete package at this time because the FAFSA just became available. So the information that you get in that first letter that says congratulations isn't your whole financial aid package. So just to kind of back up, there's merit money that's awarded at the time of your acceptance by the admissions office. Then if you qualify based on your FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid that you and your student complete together, if you qualify based on that for federal money, that's going to be awarded as a financial aid award package a little bit later after you're accepted. Sometimes the package will come in that letter, but generally it's following up a little bit after. And sometimes you don't even get a letter. Sometimes it's something that's in a portal. So again, you're going to have to work really closely with your student in terms of the financial aid process. Yes, sure.
With different levels of accommodations for different colleges and so forth, is merit applied? It could be any one of those three. So even the most supportive one, you can still earn merit money?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. It doesn't impact, that does not impact it, doesn't play a part. I mean, it does get expensive because there is the added cost for the, support programs that are charging a fee. But no, they still get merit money. So much merit money, which is great. So I'm just going to mention something that I'm not a giant fan of, but this year it's been pretty helpful. Each college is going to have a net price calculator on their website, and that can help you. You plug in your student's GPA, which you can get from us. And then also some other information about your family finances, but generally not, because they're really looking at the merit for the net price calculators. You plug that information in and it can give you an idea of what your student might get for financial aid. So it's useful. It's not 100% updated and accurate, but it's something. Again, with the FAFSA, it typically opens in October. I certainly hope that for your year of application, it will be ready in October of 2024. So you have plenty of time to put your information in, work with the college to get the financial aid packages that work for your family, and then have that information to make a decision. This year, it's going to be a little bit rushed for people, but for your grade, you guys should be fine. Nice thing about FAFSA also is it's based on prior year taxes. So as it says on the slide, this year's class of 2024, is using the 2022 taxes. So you're not hustling around to try to get your taxes done in time to do the form. You already have that on file. You just have to find it somewhere. Hopefully you know exactly where it is and you fill out the form. It takes about an hour. There's something called an FSA ID, which is how you sign the form. At least you have in previous years. So you and the student both need to have a login for that. And you can get that ahead of time. So like I said, it really should only take you about an hour. A lot of the information is right in your tax form, and you can just go to the line it tells you to look on, put the information in, and it's easy. So that's one aspect of financial aid. Unfortunately, the private schools that have a lot more money to give make you jump through a lot more hoops. So there's a form called the CSS profile that's available through the College Board. That thing is a bit more of a bear. That takes, I would say, probably a couple of hours in different amounts of time. Like you're sitting down, taking a stab at it, and you're going to have questions and you have to go back to it. So allow maybe 2 hours for that. But It's highly individual as to what colleges ask for it. You have to hop on the website, CSS profile at the College Board and see if your schools are requiring that. More schools have started to require it because of the fiasco with the FAFSA this year. So that's something to double check on. But the college financial aid websites have information on them. And those people are there to help you. They want to get you to go to their school. So they're not the enemy. They can work with you. It's not like negotiating a car purchase, but there is some dialogue that can take place. I think I covered all those slides. I guess my best advice is to make your college list with an eye to having some schools that are more likely to give your student merit aid. And we could talk about how that looks for your student, because that merit aid is probably your largest source of scholarships. A lot of kids say, oh, I want to talk to you about scholarships, but the stuff that's online is just not going to give you the big bucks. That might be 500 here, 1,000 here. The merit aid is where the big money is, frankly. Any questions on any of this? Wow, awesome. Yes. Generally, no, but it depends on the school. Oh, sorry. I should know better. Sorry, my people at home. So sorry. The question was, do you have to complete a FAFSA to qualify for merit aid at a college? And the answer is, it depends. It's highly individual. You should check the financial aid webpage for your college to find out. But it doesn't hurt you to file the FAFSA necessarily, but it's highly individual. So I can't say, yes, everyone should do it. Okay, so there. So the question was, is there a way you can get a list of schools that give a large amount of merit aid? So there are some websites that you can use. You can plug in whether a college meets need, but that tends to be more like financial need. In terms of whether they would give merit aid or not, you want to look at how well your student fits their accepted student profile. So if your student is a really good catch for them, like their GPA is going to be pretty high, like kind of above their accepted range, they're going to give you money to go there, right? That only makes sense. If you're applying, right, if you're applying for a highly selective school, say Northeastern, they have a support program. So we do have kids here who apply for that school. Merit money is a lot harder to get out of them because you have to be like a rock star, basically, to stand out in their applicant pool. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to them? The folks at home?
Are there two different applicant pools for acceptance, those that are applying for financial aid and those that are not?
I can't answer this honestly online. I think it's highly individual. That's what I'm going to say. Highly individual. Wink, wink. But no, there aren't two applicant pools. There just are not. There's one applicant pool. Okay. Did you have a question?
So you speak to the timing of the FAFSA and at the same
Yeah, so the question is, how does the timing work with the FAFSA versus the regular application process? Typically, when the FAFSA is open in October, you want to get it done at about the same time that you hit submit on the applications. But each school, again, is different. Sorry, but you're going to hear that a lot. Typically, it's around the same date. We have a lot of kids apply early action. So those deadlines are like November 1st, November 15th. So when the FAFSA is open in October, you generally are trying to get that done around November. This year, the FAFSA just opened at the beginning of January, so people are just doing it now. And we had kids who submitted in October. So it's kind of flexible, but you need to meet the deadlines published on the college's financial aid webpage.
I think it's important May 1st. You don't have to decide where a student is attending until May 1st.
Yeah, so we didn't really mention that. Yeah.
So you have
So May 1st, Mrs. Crossman was just bringing up, May 1st is the national day that you have to have your deposit down. So you're only allowed to deposit to one school. You pick that school, the money's in by May 1st. And most of the financial aid negotiating and discussions have well taken place by then.
Except early.
Early action is still the same.
Early action.
You can wait to see if you get early stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Early action does not require you to make an early commitment.
Second part. How do you guys?
I have been doing financial aid. That was a big part of what I did before I came to Landmark, and it's always wise to do it. It's always wise to appeal financial aid. No, there's no downside, and oftentimes you can find some piece of information that they didn't have, particularly if a school only takes the FAFSA. They're not going to get your family's entire financial picture. If you do the CSS profile, it could be that something's changed since you did your 2022 taxes. So it's always worthwhile to have that discussion. And we really are seeing big awards this year, so I feel like the colleges want the kids there. It's worth talking to them. For sure. Sorry. We good? Well, the population of college goers has decreased. And we are also seeing, I think, more interest from certain kids in not doing the college route, but exploring other avenues. I think Kevin talked about all the options out there, but we're seeing job training, tech training, just a wide variety of options. So the colleges, some of them are, starting to scramble a little bit, which is only going to help your kids. Someone else is due to talk.
We're running long, so you want to.
I'll just go through real quick. Yeah, yes. Rapid fire. Here we go. Okay. So who does what? And I am going to talk at the camera in front of me as well. So if I'm going super quick, feel free to ask questions afterwards as we are running out of time. So the students, I'll go from right to left if you're looking online and in person as well. So students decide essentially the list, right? The list that is going to be created that your child or children or student is essentially going to work on. We will definitely behind the scenes. So we've got some pictures. So I'm going to step away and move the mic. Yeah, there's definitely your guidance counselor will work with that student or once again students to very much create that list and help with them. But primarily, once again, the student will have the final say in that. But we will very much guide them and help them with that and navigate that. Keeping track of deadlines. I just talked about that, the application deadlines. Each student's individualized. So depending on that, we'll create a tracking list in terms of when they need to meet those deadlines. But for sure, it's their sole responsibility to make sure that they're hitting those deadlines as well. Write the essay, the goal being to have a really, really, really good rough draft going into the summer is going to be ideal. And we will tell our students as we work with them in our meetings as well. Coming back in the fall with working with each guidance counselor respectfully to finalize that to get ready for the application process. Request the recommendations. I kind of talked about that in the application process. Once the juniors get back from their summer break and start as a senior, they will be turned over to ask for those. Usually we tell them to ask for 4, 3 is ideal. But once again, most students here are pretty savvy with having a rapport with their teachers, peers, or I should say teachers, coaches, and et cetera, right? Then they're going to be responsible for completing the application process. Once again, we will help them with that. So have no fear, we're here. And then to feel empowered to ask questions along this ride, right? To piggyback off that, there's family. What you should be doing on your end. I'm going to kind of be all over the place for this because I'm going to cover it quickly. But you should also feel empowered to ask questions. Transparency is huge for us in the office as we all work together, but we like to collaborate with you as well as the parents, right? Or guardians at home. So please feel free to talk to us all the time. We welcome it. We want to hear it. Set parameters as well. That could be maybe location, right? Like you don't want your child or children or student respectively to go to like, I don't know, once again, California was mentioned maybe, or you don't want to see them south. You want to see them more local, right? And maybe that's based off of financials, right? Or whatever. Finances might be a parameter that you set for your child as well. So that is something that we want to be on the same loop regarding. College tours and visits is very, very, I'm going to say for myself personally that you should very much try to do it in moderation. Some can, some can't. But that is ideal for students to be able to get on campus and be able to experience that. I think back how sad it was when the students that were going through COVID couldn't do that, right? And you just like my heart pours for them because they weren't able to really experience that as they went through the application process. But now you can, so please feel free to take that for what it is and be able to experience that. And it's important for the parents and guardians at home as well to you're part of this process and making. I mean, you're, respectfully, the students making this big decision, but ultimately you're along the ride with it as well. So to be a part of that, you might see something that your child, or the student did not see, right? Offer insight to programs. Maybe you've done research on your end, please. Once again, that transparency side of things. And as Suzanne said, schedule the updated testing. Make sure you get, that done, as we will also remind you from our end as well. And then guidance on our end. More or less just know that we will very much keep up with your child, the students that we have on our caseload. Once again, like that's our job. We collaborate with each other. Everybody's going to be okay in this process. But we will make sure that we keep each student responsible for the things they need to do. Suzanne, you're up.
We're going to finish up quickly. Please feel free to communicate with our office. Don't hesitate to send us an email. Give us a call. You should have received an email earlier in the year with your guidance counselor's name and our contact information. If you don't have it, just send me an email and I'll get it to you again. The second Wednesday of every month, we have a coffee with the counselor. It's a virtual. The link is always in the weekly email that goes out to parents. So it's a great time to hop on and get additional information if you haven't been able to join those. Read the weekly emails. We always have announcements in there. But when in doubt, never hesitate to give us a call. We can hop on a Google Meet. If you're picking your child up or dropping your child off, we can have a meeting. We will have meetings with you all at Parents' Day, but don't feel like you have to wait until then. So don't hesitate to give us a call. The last thing, the fair, please mark your calendars, tell your friends and family, this is open to the public. So if you have, particularly if you have friends who have children in schools not at Landmark, they are welcome to attend. They're encouraged to attend. This is the third year we've doing the fair. We did one before COVID. This is the second one post-COVID. If your student attended last year, it was more like get some ideas, look at a variety of different programs. It was more exposure. This year is really a great opportunity to really ask some very specific questions. So mark your calendars, March 28th, 6 to 8 in the gym. It was very well attended last year. If you made it last year, we're excited this year. So come and feel free to let anyone else know about it. So it is open to the public. So don't hesitate to let friends and family know that have children that be interested. Yes. Actually, we have some students sometimes who have done, depending on their schedule and their needs and their interest. Every once in a while, we have students that do like year-long internships. We also have classes for seniors that seniors take that allow them to get off of campus in May and for 2.5 weeks and do a internship in May. And that is in conjunction with the study skills department. So I think we've got about 18 to 20 kids scheduled, seniors scheduled to do that this year. The other thing that we've been doing increasingly more post-COVID, as we've learned that we can do things virtually, is connecting our students with alum, both in colleges and in various careers, because we can, don't have to wait for them to be in the area to come on campus. We've learned that we can hook them up. So it's a great opportunity to learn about careers, to talk to some alum who have been doing some job. And Kevin's had Students talk to people who are graduated and are now working as engineers. And I had someone earlier this fall talking with an alum who's an environmental police officer down on the Cape. And we can connect them also with students at various colleges. So that is something that we try to do as well. Thank you for your time. I thank for the people online. I thank you for hanging in there as we figured out, or hopefully figured out, the technical difficulties. We even practiced yesterday. But we will have this recording posted online, and I'll put the link on it in the weekly email. It'll probably be sometime next week. But we will have it there. So hopefully the recording audio is better than what you got tonight. But thank you for your time.